My name is Joanna, Joe, Carter, 33 years old from Roanoke, Virginia. What do you do when the person who shares your blood is the one who poisons your life? My sister didn't just betray me, she stole my name, my home, and nearly destroyed me. But she underestimated one thing. I don't stay buried. This is the story of how I lost everything, and took it all back. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted the most, you'll want to hear how this story ends. Jealousy. Deception. A family torn apart. But in the end, justice speaks louder than blood. If you're hooked already, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more true-to-life drama and revenge stories, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a twist. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. The air inside the Carter house was still. Not quiet, still, like something was holding its breath. I stood in the front parlor, surrounded by dusty portraits and the scent of old wood and tobacco. Daddy's favorite chair sat empty by the fireplace, its cushion slightly sunken, as if he'd just gotten up. But he wasn't coming back. Not now. Not ever. He died 3 days ago. Heart attack, the doctor said. Quick. Final. I got the call from Reverend Holcomb while I was unpacking groceries in my Richmond apartment. By the time I made the 2-hour drive west into the Blue Ridge, the house was already heavy with casseroles and condolences. Delilah showed up in pearls and mascara, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief monogrammed with our daddy's initials. She played the grieving daughter perfectly. People always ate up her act like peach cobbler. Now, here we were, me, her, and Mr. Rowley, daddy's lawyer, hunched over a folder full of old man's wishes in the same study where we used to get lectured for sneaking into the wine cellar. Mr. Rowley cleared his throat. According to this, Thomas Carter bequeaths the entire estate, including the family home, adjacent land, and associated assets, to Joanna Carter. I blinked. Just me? Delilah's face didn't even twitch. There must be a mistake, I said, leaning forward. He wouldn't cut her out. But Mr. Rowley adjusted his glasses and read the line again. Word for word. To Joanna Carter, for her unwavering loyalty and commitment to the family name. I glanced at Delilah. Her lips curled into a tight smile. One that didn't reach her eyes. Eyes that were flat, unreadable, dangerous. I'm sure Daddy had his reasons, she said softly, brushing invisible lint from her skirt. You were always the responsible one, Joe. It sounded like praise, but it wasn't. It was venom dressed up in Sunday manners. I don't want the whole thing, I said quickly. We can split it, figure something out. Delilah reached over and squeezed my hand. Her touch was cold. Of course, honey, she whispered. We're family. But something in her voice twisted my stomach. We finished the reading. Mr. Rowley offered his condolences and left. Delilah stood by the front window, watching him drive off, arms crossed tight across her chest. I turned to her. I really didn't know about this. I swear. She didn't look at me. It's fine, Joe. I'm happy for you. But her voice cracked just slightly on the last word. Outside, the wind picked up through the oaks, rattling brittle leaves like bones. Inside, Delilah finally turned and smiled again. It was the kind of smile you give someone when you're already planning how to bury them. I didn't know it then, but that moment was the match, and Delilah Carter, she was already holding the gasoline. The day after the will reading, I made 2 strong cups of coffee and waited for Delilah to come down from her old bedroom. She used to call it the Princess Suite, back when we were kids playing dress up. Now, the wallpaper was peeling, and the closet smelled like mothballs. But she still acted like royalty, descending the stairs in silk pajamas and a perfectly practiced frown. I was thinking, I began, sliding the mug across the table. We could split it. Delilah paused mid-sip. Split what? The house. The land. Everything. We can make it 50-50. Daddy might have left it all to me, but that doesn't mean, she waved her hand. Joe, stop. I appreciate it, really, but that's not necessary. The will is the will. You deserve it. The smile she gave me was as hollow as the offer I had just made. It wasn't acceptance. It was strategy. I tried to believe she meant it. I wanted to. But by the end of that week, things started happening. It began with the calls. The first came just past midnight, private number. I answered, bleary-eyed. Nothing but breathing on the other end. The second night, a voice whispered, "You should have stayed gone." I thought it might have been a prank, but then came the eviction notices, tenant after tenant from the back cottages, places Daddy used to rent to locals, called me in a panic. "Ms. Carter," they said, "we got notice you're selling." But I hadn't written a single letter. Someone else had. Next came the mail. An envelope with no return address. Inside was a photograph of me and Delilah as girls, ripped down the middle, with my side burnt. No note. Just ash smudges and silence. I confronted Delilah in the kitchen, holding the torn picture like evidence. She stood at the sink, washing wine glasses she hadn't used. "I didn't send anything," she said calmly, never looking at me. "But someone did," I snapped. "Someone's trying to scare me off my own land. Maybe it's one of those tenants you ignored all those years you were off in the city." Her voice was flat, casual, like we were discussing the weather. My fingers tightened around the photo. "You think this is a game?" "No, Joe," she said, turning finally. Her eyes were cool. Sharp. "I think you're just not used to being the one people talk about." She left the kitchen humming an old church tune, the same one Mama used to sing while baking cornbread. But there was something twisted in the way Delilah dragged it out, like it wasn't a melody anymore, just a warning dressed in nostalgia. I should have trusted my gut then. I should have known that graciousness from Delilah was never a gift, it was bait, and I had just walked into the trap. It was just after dawn when I found it. The sun had barely crested over the Blue Ridge, casting long, golden fingers across the Carter front yard. I had gone out to check the mailbox, still in my robe and slippers, coffee in hand. But I froze halfway down the walkway. There, nailed to the wooden gatepost like some sick trophy, was a dead crow. Wings splayed wide. Head tilted unnaturally, glassy eyes catching the morning light like polished stones. But it wasn't the bird that made my stomach flip, it was what was tied around its neck, a faded blue gingham ribbon, Delilah's ribbon. She used to wear it every Sunday, tied into her long chestnut curls, Mama fussing over her like she was porcelain. I hadn't seen that ribbon in years. Thought it had rotted away in an attic box or gotten buried under prom dresses and perfume bottles. But now it was here, knotted tight, soaked with blood and something darker. I backed away slowly, breath caught in my throat, before bolting inside. I called the sheriff. Sheriff Cole showed up an hour later, chewing a toothpick and looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. He studied the crow, scratched his head, and let out a low whistle. "Could be a prank," he muttered. "Kids getting bold these days." "That's not a prank," I snapped. "That ribbon belonged to my sister. Someone nailed a dead bird to my property, Sheriff." He jotted a few notes on a crumpled notepad. "You got any enemies, Miss Carter?" I glanced toward the house, where I knew Delilah was watching through the lace curtains. "Only the ones who know me best." He didn't write that down. He took the crow down like it was nothing, bagged it, said he'd look into it, and drove off without another word. I stood alone at the gate, watching the bloodstained wood glisten in the rising heat. By noon, the whispers had started. At the grocery store, I felt eyes on my back as I reached for a can of beans. At the diner, the waitress took my order with a tight smile and avoided small talk. Even Reverend Holcomb, who'd baptized me and buried my daddy, seemed cautious when he shook my hand outside church. "Some folks saying you and your sister been feuding," he said gently. "Just keep things quiet, Joe. People don't take well to drama around here." Drama. That's what they called it, not threats. Not harassment. Not fear knotting in my chest every time the phone rang at night. Delilah, of course, played the innocent. Claimed she'd been out all morning when the crow appeared. "That's horrible, Joe," she said, eyes wide with mock concern. "Who would do something like that?" I didn't answer. I just looked at her, really looked, because I knew the truth. Delilah wasn't just trying to scare me, she wanted me gone, and now, I could feel the storm she was conjuring closing in. It started with a bounced check, just a routine bill, repairs on the back cottage roof. But when I checked the balance, my stomach dropped. The account Daddy had opened in my name, the one tied to the property's income, was nearly empty. I told myself it was a mistake. Maybe the bank was delayed updating deposits. Maybe one of the tenants hadn't paid yet. But then the electric bill went unpaid. The water got shut off for the guest house. And two of the tenants, both families who'd rented from Daddy for years, moved out overnight without a word. When I called one of them, old Mr. Harrelson, he hesitated before speaking. "I'm sorry, Miss Joe," he said softly. "We got a notice saying the new owner was raising the rent double. We couldn't stay." "New owner?" I asked. "Yes, ma'am. Letter came signed by you." I felt the floor tilt under me. I hadn't sent any letters. The next morning, I marched into the local bank, demanding answers. Mrs. Latham at the desk smiled stiffly as I explained the situation. She vanished into the back, and after 20 minutes, returned with a folder and a furrowed brow. "These documents are all in your name, Miss Carter. Signatures match what we have on file." I looked down at the stack of loan agreements. Account withdrawals, even property transfer documents. All with my name at the bottom, my signature, only. It wasn't mine, not exactly. It was close, so close it gave me chills. The loop on the J, the little curl on the C. Every habit I'd picked up scribbling in church bulletins during Sunday school. And right beside me, week after week, year after year, had been Delilah. Copying my notes. Practicing her penmanship with mine. I pressed a hand to my mouth. She hadn't just taken my money, she'd stolen me. I stumbled out of the bank in a fog. The world felt like it was tilting sideways. Cars passed, people chatted on sidewalks, the normal rhythm of Roanoke continued, but my entire foundation had cracked. At home, I confronted her. Delilah sat at the kitchen table, sipping sweet tea, flipping through a gardening magazine like nothing in the world had changed. "You've been forging my name," I said, voice shaking. She didn't look up. "That's a serious accusation, Joe." I saw the documents. She finally glanced at me, and there it was again, that calm, smug smile. "If your signature's so easy to fake, maybe you should be more careful," she said coolly. "I'll go to the police." Delilah leaned forward, eyes glittering. "Go ahead. But remember, you're the one who inherited everything. You think they'll believe I did it? Or that you just got in over your head and needed someone to blame?" She stood, walked past me, and whispered low as she passed, "You should have stayed in Richmond." As the screen door creaked behind her, I realized the truth. I wasn't just losing my name, I was being erased. The knock came just after 7 in the morning, loud, firm, and final. I opened the door to find Sheriff Cole standing on the porch, 3 deputies behind him, all grim-faced. He didn't even remove his hat this time. "Joanna Carter," he said, unfolding a document. "We have a court-issued warrant to seize the Carter estate and surrounding properties. You're being evicted on grounds of mortgage fraud, unpaid debt, and falsified financial records." I stared at him, mouth dry. "This is a mistake. I didn't do any of that." "You know I didn't." Sheriff Cole wouldn't meet my eyes. "I'm sorry, Joe. Paperwork's official. Bank owns it now." Behind him, the deputies started moving. One began photographing the front of the house. Another opened the back of a truck and started unloading boxes marked evidence. I didn't move. Couldn't. Daddy built this house with his own 2 hands. Every brick, every nail, every flake of chipped paint, he'd touched it. The porch swing where Mama read us bedtime stories. The old pantry we used as a hiding spot during thunderstorms. Gone. Just like that. "Where's Delilah?" I asked, voice cracking. Sheriff Cole hesitated. "Not involved, far as we can tell. Her name's not on any documents." I almost laughed. Of course it wasn't. She was too smart for that. She forged mine. Always mine, By noon, I was standing on the front lawn with nothing but a duffel bag and a cardboard box of old family photos. The doors were locked behind me. My name wiped from the mailbox. The deputies didn't even look back as they drove off. I stayed frozen on the lawn until I heard the hum of a van and the snap of a camera shutter. Local news. Channel 9 parked right across the street, bold as brass. And there she was, Delilah, stepping out of her car in a tailored blazer, hair curled, makeup perfect, face solemn. She clutched a tissue in her hand as the reporter shoved a mic toward her. "It's just tragic," she said, blinking tears that never fell. "Joe's always been strong, but I guess losing Daddy broke her more than any of us realized." We all process grief differently. I stood 20 feet away, watching my sister lie into a microphone, turning my life into a cautionary tale for viewers over dinner. "She's not well," Delilah added softly. "But I still love her. She's my sister." That was the moment something inside me snapped. Love? This wasn't love, this was a funeral, and she was nailing shut the coffin. The Carter name, our legacy, was being buried in shame and silence, and she was the one lowering it into the ground. I walked away from the cameras, from the house, from the past, but as I passed Delilah, our eyes locked. She smiled. That same cold, triumphant smile, and I knew, this war wasn't over, not by a long shot. I arrived in Richmond with a half tank of gas, $43 to my name, and no plan. The city lights didn't welcome me, they flickered like a warning. I slept the first night in my car behind a 24-hour laundromat, clutching the last box of family photos like a lifeline. In the morning, I found a listing for motel housekeeping work on a bulletin board in a corner diner. No questions asked. Just $10.50 an hour, paid in cash. I took it. Scrubbing mildew off bathroom tiles and dragging vacuums over stained carpet wasn't noble, but it was honest. And it kept me busy, too busy to think about how far I'd fallen. Until the nights came, and with them, the memories. I thought I'd cry. Thought I'd break, but grief doesn't always fall in tears. Sometimes, it settles like stone. Delilah had taken everything. The house. My name. My reputation. And she'd done it with a ribbon-wrapped smile for the cameras. I stopped grieving. I started planning. Each night, after my shift ended, I sat in the motel's break room with a cheap secondhand laptop and an even cheaper cup of coffee. I dug into every file I could find. I requested copies of bank transactions, pulled old emails, searched for witnesses. I called tenants, old friends, even Mr. Rowley's assistant, anyone who might have seen Delilah's hand in the paperwork. Patterns started to emerge. Delilah had used my name to secure loans with inflated property values. She'd opened credit lines, sold off furniture and land under forged authorizations. She'd even rerouted the rental income from the cottages into a private account, one she disguised under the Carter Family LLC. One night, while combing through scanned documents on a flash drive I'd pulled from my old desk, I found it, a scanned letter of authorization supposedly signed by me, granting Delilah financial control over the Carter estate. It was dated 2 days before Daddy's funeral, and the signature? It was perfect. Too perfect. I stared at it for a long time. I remembered Sunday school. The wooden pews. How Delilah used to copy my cursive during Bible verses. How she once bragged to Mama, "I can write just like Joe." She wasn't lying. I printed every document, highlighted every connection. I made folders, one for the lawyer, one for the sheriff, and one just for me. Because this wasn't going to be some desperate plea for sympathy, this was war. She had painted me as the broken sister. The failure. The fraud. Now, I was going to show the world who really buried the Carter legacy. Delilah thought she'd burned me to the ground, but what she didn't know was that some women don't stay ashes, some women rise. And I was ready to rise with fire in my hands. It took me 6 weeks to find him. Raymond Ellison, once one of the sharpest legal minds in Western Virginia, was now retired, living alone in a modest bungalow just outside Petersburg. His front porch was sagging, and he answered the door in a flannel robe with nicotine-stained fingers. But when I mentioned Delilah Carter's name and the lawyer who helped her get my father's estate, something in his eyes lit up, like an old fire rekindled. "Lyle Carrington," he said with a grunt, motioning for me to sit. "Slick snake in a silk tie. I beat him once over a zoning case. Been waiting for a reason to do it again. I handed him the folder of evidence I'd gathered, photos, documents, emails, the forged authorization letter. He studied them with the intensity of a man who used to live for the courtroom. "You're not crazy," he muttered after a long silence. "This isn't just fraud. It's strategic identity theft. And if half of this holds up, your sister won't be doing TV interviews. She'll be doing time." We got to work. Raymond made calls. Quiet ones. To clerks he used to know. To paralegals, old judges, title office folks who remembered the Carter family. Meanwhile, I drove back to Roanoke on weekends under a different name, booked cheap rooms at motels on the edge of town, met with former tenants in diners and church basements. They remembered me. More importantly, they remembered her. "She told us you moved to Florida," Mr. Harrelson said, eyes wide. "Said she was taking over the estate with your blessing." Another woman, Miss Louise from the cottage near the woods, gave me a letter she'd kept. One with my signature and Delilah's new rent demands. But when I showed her my actual signature on a rental receipt from 2 years earlier, she gasped. "This ain't you," she whispered. "This is her." Raymond compiled everything. Testimonies. Bank records. Documents traced to Carrington's office. We even found one of Delilah's interns from her brief stint working at a Roanoke realty firm. He confessed to watching her sign paperwork she joked wasn't hers. Each thread we pulled loosened the weave of her lie. Her empire, built on charm and deception, started to show its cracks. And the more we dug, the clearer it became. Delilah didn't just betray me. She betrayed everyone. Raymond was careful. "This isn't a sprint, Joe," he said one night, spreading files across his coffee table. "It's chess. You move too fast, she'll slip out clean. We wait. We bait. And when we strike, it's with evidence so solid the judge won't even blink." I nodded, gripping the mug of lukewarm tea he'd made. My hands trembled, not with fear, but focus. For the first time since Daddy died, I felt something other than pain. I felt control. Delilah thought she'd buried me, but I was digging too, and I was about to pull her whole world down with me. The morning of the auction was cold, even for late October. A brittle wind rolled off the mountains, carrying the scent of decaying leaves and something electric. Change. I wore a gray coat, sunglasses, and kept my hair tucked beneath a knit cap. The name on the bidder registration form wasn't mine. Margaret Ellison. Raymond's idea. He said anonymity was power, and surprise, the sharpest weapon. The crowd gathered on the courthouse steps was small. Mostly local investors and realtors looking to flip the Carter estate into condos or vacation rentals. And then there was her, Delilah, draped in designer wool and false confidence. She stood just beyond the auctioneer, chatting with Lyle Carrington like she already owned the place. Her laugh cut through the morning like broken glass. I watched from a distance, heart hammering, knowing I only had one shot to get this right. The auctioneer raised his clipboard. "We begin bidding on parcel 714, known locally as the Carter Estate. Minimum bid, $190,000. Hands rose. Bids climbed. 200. 215. 230. Delilah glanced at her phone, smirking like she already knew the outcome. 250. 260. I raised my hand. 275, I said, voice steady. Carrington frowned. Delilah turned, squinting into the crowd. 280, she snapped. Raymond, standing a few feet behind me, gave the tiniest nod. I raised my hand again. 300. Gasps rippled. Even the auctioneer seemed surprised. 300. Do I hear 310? Delilah hesitated, her eyes locked on me, and then narrowed. 310, she forced out. I waited a beat. Then said, clearly, 320. Silence. The auctioneer scanned the crowd. Do I hear 330? Delilah's jaw tightened. Her hand twitched, but she didn't raise it, going once. Twice. Sold, to Margaret Ellison. Applause broke out, scattered and confused. I stepped forward to sign the papers. The auctioneer handed me the deed, smiling politely. Delilah stormed up, fury flashing in her eyes. "This is a mistake," she hissed. "Who the hell are you?" I pulled off the sunglasses. Then the cap, her face drained like a slow leak. "Hello, Delilah," I said calmly. "Miss me?" She stumbled back a step. "You can't, I just did." I held up the deed. "This house? Ours once. Then yours. Now. Mine again. You don't know what you're doing." "No, you didn't," I said, voice rising. "You took everything from me. My name. My home. My reputation. I lost years because of you." People were staring now. The crowd quieted. I leaned closer, keeping my voice low. "I'm just returning the favor." Delilah's mask cracked. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. I walked away. Raymond met me at the edge of the steps, eyes twinkling. "You just reclaimed a legacy, Joe." I didn't look back. The Carter house was mine again, not because I inherited it, but because I fought for it. And Delilah, she had nothing left to steal, except her pride, and I just bought that too, the first time I saw the trailer. I nearly missed it. It was tucked behind a line of overgrown pines, just off Route 11, half sunken into the earth like it had been trying to disappear for years. Rust laced the siding. The steps sagged. One of the windows was patched with duct tape and cardboard. I pulled over across the road, engine idling, hands resting quietly on the steering wheel. There she was, Delilah. She stood outside the trailer in a cheap uniform, faded pink shirt, black apron smeared with grease. The name tag clipped to her chest read Lila. She wiped her hands on a rag and lit a cigarette with fingers that trembled. Even from this distance, I could see the hollowness in her. The shine was gone. The curls she once took an hour to perfect now hung limp around her face. Her lipstick was smudged. Her heels had been traded for non-slip diner shoes. I didn't honk. Didn't wave, just watched. After the auction, everything unraveled for her. Once the documents Raymond and I turned in went public, her reputation collapsed faster than the lies she built it on. Lyle Carrington was disbarred. Delilah avoided jail, barely, but lost her license, her job, and the fake empire she clung to. The court ruled in my favor. Fraud, forgery, slander, the list went on. Delilah was ordered to pay restitution. But what's left to take from someone who already lost everything? Now she works double shifts at the diner by the highway. Locals whisper about her the way they once whispered about me. They call her the Carter girl who faked her sister's signature. She hears it every time she refills a coffee cup. I see her sometimes on my way to town. Always alone. Always tired. Once, I spotted her scrubbing the diner bathroom floors. Another time, standing behind the cash register as a teenager complained about cold fries. I never stop. I don't need to, because Delilah doesn't fear prison or poverty. She fears irrelevance. Being unseen. Forgotten. A shadow of the queen she once imagined herself to be, and now, that's exactly what she's become. Meanwhile, the Carter house stands strong again. I've restored it room by room, painted the porch, repaired the swing, reopened the back cottages to tenants who knew Daddy. The land feels clean now, like the lies were scrubbed from its bones. I've taken the name back. The pride. The story, but I didn't seek revenge with fire or fists. I just waited, because the cruelest justice isn't destruction, it's letting someone live with the weight of what they've done. And knowing no one's listening anymore, I drove off that day without a second glance. Let her sit in the silence. Let her fade. She made my life a ruin, I rebuilt mine, and let hers rot in peace. Some betrayals cut deeper than any knife, but sometimes, the best revenge is simply surviving, and thriving. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button, subscribe for more gripping tales of betrayal, revenge, and redemption, and leave a comment below. What would you have done in Joe's shoes? Thanks for listening, and remember, some scars tell the best stories.